Good morning, this is Jeff with Sewer Tech Northwest. Today we're at property address, bear with me here, 860, sorry my notes keep blowing around, 860 Northwest 1st Avenue here in Canby. We're located at the front of the house. We are straight out from the front door under a little cover plate here in the concrete patio. You've got a 3-inch ABS clean out. There is another one right underneath my clipboard here. That's likely going to be for your storm system. Anyway, we're going to check the overall condition, serviceability of the sanitary sewer line. Water is running. We're going to zero out the foot counter here once we get going the right direction. It's kind of a funky clean out. There we go. It kind of hooks you backward toward the house rather than away from it. Anyway, we just zeroed out there. Water's running. Off we go. I got some standing water here. We're probably going to see a transition to PVC in just a second. Well, look at that. It's transitioning over to PVC. Reason I know that, after 13 years of scoping sewer lines, transition joints are the most common spot in a sewer line to get standing water. And it's often because these two sections of pipe are being installed at a different time. The developer often puts in this green pipe, and then when the builders buy the lots, they often are digging them up and exposing those green pieces of pipe and then attaching the ABS pipe to them. And in the process of doing that, either if you don't get your math right on the money when you're grading things down to connect to that stub, and or when they go to dig the stubs up and expose them, it's fairly easy to undermine some of the soil there or loosen it up. And then when you go to bury it again, it's not uncommon at all to get some standing water in those locations. So anyway, we're going to take a second look at that on the way out. A lot of times those transition joint bellies like that are often really not worth messing with, but we'll take a look, make sure the joints are sealed up, and we'll see how significant it is. I don't ever like to gauge or look at a belly until the line's drained out, because the running water does exaggerate things to an extent. But the plus side there is you've got a good hard vertical drop prior to it, which keeps things moving along pretty good, which also, in the event a blockage does occur, it creates quite a lot of head pressure, which is the water weight that builds up behind a blockage. So there are locations that they're usually pretty uncommon to actually get a blockage out of unless the line's being abused, but we will take a second look at that on the way out. We're going to go locate here. We're at the main. All right, located the camera head successfully. The line terminates on Northwest 1st Avenue. And the line where I took that locate here, the line runs pretty darn straight all the way out to the main. It might meander a little bit, but if you were to draw an imaginary straight line from the clean out to the main, that's essentially the pathway the line takes, in case you're curious where the line goes. The line terminates on the far side of the road. It goes past the middle of the street. The rest of the line here is really only one spot I want to take a good look at. It's that transition joint. And it's a hard spot to visually watch for diameter. I want to say that most houses in Canby transition to 6-inch pipe by the time they get into the PVC portion of the line that we're in right now. When you have standing water like that, just visually speaking, it's hard to watch for the diameter change. It's either 4-inch or 6-inch. I believe this is 6 though. All the PVC pipe looks great there. Drains off very nicely. So the belly here dissipates off, and we'll call it 9 feet just to make it easy. It's about 9.5. So once the line's all drained out, it's a very short-lived little belly. Right here it looks more significant because my camera is in a nosedive orientation right now. Once you level the camera off and flatten it out, the water line is just barely hitting the top of my camera lens. So you've got about 1 inch of standing water there for, let's see, the belly in total is about 2 feet in length. It runs from about 7 feet to 9 feet. At its worst point, it has 1 inch of standing water. but it's only for about the first foot of it. It tapers off to a pretty minor amount by the time you pop out of the standing water here. You've got a couple little stringy items there coming off the pipe joint up top. The hard part is they're so small, and it's also at the base of a hard vertical drop. When stuff comes blasting down through a drop like that and hits the bottom of this, you often, especially with a toilet flush, high volume amount of water coming through the line, stuff will often splash upward. It's like that debris you see there at the top of the pipe, which right now is on the right side of the screen. This line shows no evidence of backing up. The way that debris is displayed in here, you'd have debris going up the sidewalls too, where you just all of a sudden you have some random stuff there at the top of the line. Anyway, when you get stuff coming down the pipe like this, it can splash upward into the top of the sewer line. So human hair can do that. It could be cobwebs. You know, I'll notate on the report that you could potentially have a root intrusion here. It's a possibility. There's just not enough there to verify that's what it is. And roots typically will not get plastered to the sidewall like that, especially to the top of the sewer line in that fashion. That's much more indicative of debris that's gone down the line. Roots typically hang downward into the flow line so they can get to nutrients. So I'll notate it, but right now, that's honestly looking more like debris that's gone down the line. There's lots of stringy stuff that goes down sewer pipes. Dental floss, string coming off your clothes from the washing machine. There's just tons of things. All right, we're now going backwards toward the home. Oh, sorry. This is a hard one to... Like, I'm gonna have to turn some water on really quick here. You can't see to the bottom of the clean out to know which direction your camera's heading. I guess you kind of can if you look into it at an angle. There we go. Now we're going backwards. Not sure why they put the clean out in the way they did. It's kind of funky. All right, at this point here, we are back inside the house. You've got a little bit of grease buildup in the line. It's not significant enough to require cleaning. I mostly point that out for educational purposes, and it's going to look extra exaggerated right now because I don't have water running to clean the camera lens off. But it's a pretty run-of-the-mill amount of grease. My camera just busted up a lot of it. Most of that's going to flow out on its own. I mostly point that out for educational purposes. If you put a lot of grease down your line, it will indeed build up, and grease is responsible for a lot of blockages, especially when you get a really thick layer throughout the entire line. Just turns your pipe into a sticky mess, and it is often the culprit behind a lot of stuff that would otherwise make its way out. Especially when you have kiddos in the household that are wadding up their toilet paper like a softball. Those blockages often will a lot of times they will block, but temporarily, because they're made of a proper item like toilet paper that disintegrates on its own. And under the head pressure of water building up behind them, a lot of times they break loose and you have no idea a blockage even occurred. But when you get a lot of grease build up in your line, it acts like glue. And that same blockage that might break loose after just a few feet of pipe fill up behind it can now withstand, or for example, 15, 20, 30 feet of pipe filling up behind it, and it's more likely that a run-of-the-mill, toilet paper blockage could turn into an actual sewer event. So it's one of those things you want to try and keep up with, if you can. The big thing is just when you've got pans that have a notable amount of oil on them. Kind of the rule of thumb I tell most people is if you've got enough grease or oil on your pans, if you were to turn the pan sideways, this is when the pan's hot or warm, and that debris were to, the grease or oil were to run off the pan in beads or worse. It's at that point you want to do something about it. You want to wipe the pans out with a paper towel when the pan cools down, or pour the grease into a jar. You just want to keep it from going down the line. A thin little coating of PAM spray is no big deal. That stuff is handled by hot water and soap. It's when you're putting real quantity down the line. So, anyway, don't want to get too hung up on that. This line is not at the point where it needs cleaning. Just the PSA for the day on grease buildup. Anyhow, and the belly there is too minor, in my opinion, to require repairs. There's a lot of things working in your favor here. to keep things humming along. And there's no evidence of past blockages there, and I really wouldn't expect to see that. Not unless I also saw the line loaded up with wipes and things like that. That's the kind of stuff it would take to get that to a point of blocking, is abusive items. And then I will notate on the report, possible roots at 9 feet. But right now, if they are roots, they're too small to even verify that that's what they are. They are so many things that mimic the look of tiny roots. So I generally don't like to jump to repairs unless they're obvious. Unless they're hanging way down, you've got flared out root tips, you know, dirt coming to the joint. Roots are pretty darn obvious when you see them fully displayed. When they're tiny and minor and have just intruded or something like that, they can look exactly like tons of different debris that's gone down the line. And functionality is not being affected in any way by what's going on there. And it may not be anything at all. So anyway, we've got good flow of the main lateral. A little bit of a question mark there at the transition joint at 9 feet. Otherwise, everything else looks like it is completely intact, good shape, and has good flow. Line is functioning properly at this time.